Okay. Well, guys, let's take a look at what's going on here with Helldivers 2 tonight. Oh my god. Escalation of Freedom. Yep, so this is going to be more of a preview. And a preview is the new blog. We need to get Charles in here? We might. Let's take a peek here. Alright. Where's Charles? We need Charles, guys.
Helldivers 2's biggest update yet. Escalation of Freedom.
Yeah, new difficulty, surprise. New mission objective, surprise. New enemies, surprise.
Welcome to the Escalation of Freedom, Helldivers. We've taken the time to gather feedback from our players on the front lines.
Yeah?
We're bringing greater variety to our content.
Ah!
From missions and objectives to enemies and planets, we're delivering lots of new
Feedback,
content for both our veteran players and brand new Helldivers on the battlefield. Get ready for our biggest update yet.
I'll give you some fucking feedback, that's for sure. I'll give you some goddamn feedback. Could have fixed the game. Could have fixed this game 2 months ago, or excuse me, 3 months ago, guys. Could have maintained, 150,000 players, but I'm a brand risk, as it turns out. I'm a brand risk. So now I'm getting paid for contractual work in 10 cent SC credits. Yep. Now we're just getting paid. This must be what it's like. This must be what it's like to work in China right now. FeelsBadMan. Age gated. 100 years old. That's accurate. What you got for me? Trailer. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. By the way, everything should be in 4K. Just because it's in 4K doesn't mean you're actually going to be watching in 4K. There's almost no excuse to have footage and not have it be in 4K when you're recording it, because it's very easy to do. Oh my god, graboids!
Since launch,
not really.
We've improved
it's
Helldivers
Pilz!
quite significantly.
I thought he was an old guy. I swear to God, Pilz was an old guy. He's a young lad? He's a young, strapping lad in his mid-40s? No way. Actually, I think he's like 30 or something. He looks 30. A young, strapping lad? I swear we saw photos of him and he looked like Gavin.
The community. We've released a lot of content, such as the flyers, the TCS missions, the destruction of an entire planet. This time around, we've got something special prepared for you.
It's our first step out of many, where we're gonna expand the game in big, meaningful ways.
So, we actually pointed this out when we first saw these guys, roughly a week ago, I want to say. We talked about this roughly a week ago when it popped up. It's actually one of the clips where we first saw it and talked about it when it was happening. That clip didn't trend at all because I'm not a big streamer, as it turns out. Didn't trend at all because I'm not a big streamer. But it was here. This is 4 or 5 days ago. This is a new POI. It's like a added grub. This in. I saw a grub there. What the fuck was that? They added these in. That's a new POI. Never said anything. Never said anything, like no one noticed it. Never said a damn thing. A lot of stuff in this game, the guys, they enable or they update without ever having to update your client. This right here was instituted 4 days ago prior to this announcement. I noticed it immediately because I just happen to be observant and fantastic at what I do. And I love to point out, by the way, that a lot of streamers didn't notice that the tiles, the procedurally generated tiles, were being rearranged and changed in like the first month and a half. Like it didn't even cross their radar that what they were seeing was different in the procedural generation. I love pointing that out. You gotta differentiate yourself from the fodder, right? Yeah. Like a little grub in the ground. Oh, we're gonna have tremors! What was that? That was new!
Say hello to democracy.
Clip it! Clip it! Clip it! This is accolades. I need to do this more often. I'm a content creator. I need to make content. Clip it. Clip it. Where's the clip button? Clip that. So this was 4 days ago. 19 views, guys. Welcome to being a small streamer. 19 views. absolutely no one gave two shits. I posted to Twitter, and my post got deboosted. For some strange reason, the URL doesn't actually connect to Twitch. Like, like connection refused, which is hilarious because you're supposed to be able to, post clips to Twitter, right? And then get people on Twitch. Yep, didn't work. 19 views. This was almost a week ago, a couple days ago, basically last Friday? Would that be? Last Friday? I said that after this, it basically felt like they enabled the title that day. The day of, right? So, yeah. Last Friday. And lo and behold, what we see here is looks like, what is that game? There's a new game. So obviously there is Death Stranding, which is having the container with the baby on your back. But then there's the new game, which is like this schizophrenic clusterfuck of random shit in it. I don't know if you guys saw that. Like, it's what is the name of the game? It's an MMO, and it was like, it popped on Twitch for like maybe a week, and then some people played just simply because it's so fucking weird and random. Yeah, that was like a week ago, I want to say, ish. No, a week ago. It was a while ago, but it lasted for about a week. What's the name of the game? Random. Ashes of Creation. Looks kind of like we're gonna get defend the VIP. So defend the VIP. So someone escorts an objective to another location, and as such, you get to go to the location itself, right? Yeah. I think it's Ashes of Creation. Maybe not. No, and it's not Ashes of Creation. Once Human. Is that it? I think it's Once Human. It is a random clusterfuck of weird shit. Yeah, this is it, where you carry around like a butterfly in your backpack for some reason. I don't even know why. Either way, this is not something that is completely unheard of, but my guess is it's an escort mission, basically, is what it turns into, only to protect the guy, which is actually pretty cool. I hope this is done, because that means you have to encounter enemies and deal with enemies along the way to wherever you're going, right?
We're gonna expand the game in big, meaningful ways.
Malmberg?
New game modes.
Who's Malmberg?
New objectives.
Wait, whoa. Nicholas. Can we start blaming Nicholas for things?
In big,
design director. Nicholas. Maybe this is who watches my streams.
Meaningful ways.
I thought it was Joel.
New game modes, new objectives, new enemies, and even a whole new difficulty.
To give you that, we have to escalate it.
And even...
Oh my god, what is that, guys? What happens when you take the walker and all of a sudden you just cover the back? Mind blown! Holy shit. What's going on here, guys? Oh no! As it turns out, they might be... I mean, they actually figured out the AI quite well with the walkers early on in the game, which we've talked about. Early on, the walkers were really... They just walked up to you and tried to step on you and shit. But obviously that made them vulnerable to fire. And what they did with the walkers, they basically made it so they're like a mid-range harass unit, where they basically... You have a bunch of robots over here, and you're over here behind a rock, and instead of them walking all the way over here and trying to shoot you, which then you just basically shoot their back, right? And you just run around beside them and shoot their back. They made it so they run up halfway, in which you can't get around the side to shoot them, and then they just like keep shooting at you from range, where basically you can't do anything about it because their backside's covered by line of sight, more or less, and you can't do anything about it. Does it even matter anymore? Not really, because you still deal with those by taking a plasma grenade launcher, aka the Plasma Punisher, or you take a Scorcher, or, you know, you have something that can penetrate armor, and makes it relatively easy to deal with. But
new enemies.
Oh my god!
And even a whole new difficulty.
To give you that, we have to escalate
Diff 10. That's not going to be
Escalation
enough.
of Freedom.
Oh, he said the thing. He said the thing, guys. Also, why is my reverse keys not working here? He said the thing. Oh my god. You can see he's reading the line.
To give you that, we have to escalate it.
Oh.
An escalation of
Oh,
freedom.
oh, the tagline. Oh. So diff 10, as we talked about in the BetterDivers guide, right? So challenge progression is something I really hope they add to the game, which is an infinitesimally higher amount of difficulties. Diff 10 still means that everyone's going to want to play Diff 10, right? As it turns out. I got to actually, before I forget, there's an article that's discussing the major order that is something I also need to cover here, and I'm going to forget about it and basically everything else we talked about. So as we talked about before, Diff 10, what that means is a higher difficulty. But the problem with what we have right now is the fact that Reddit, like we talked about the bell curve of the game itself. The bell curve is basically where the majority of the player base resides. When the game first launched, majority of the player base is probably playing around Diff 6 and 7, and they got up till maybe 8, 7, 8-ish, and they're like, why can't I play Diff 9? Why can't I do this? Why can't I just do what everyone else did? And they went to Reddit and bitched until the difficulty got reduced, and then they were able to actually play the game. That's not what you want to see. That's definitely not what you want to see. So, like, the difficulty, despite it might be, and this might be, like, you know, this might not be a linear increase in difficulty. This might be much more difficult than Diff 9, right? It might be, like, fucking like this, but for human psyche, so, you know, like, it's like this, and the diff curve goes like, boop, like this. The majority of the player base is still like this on their bell curve, and they're so close to Diff 10, they're like, why can't I play Diff 10? If the game was better, I would be able to play Diff 10, right? Despite the fact that it's supposed to be, you know, harder and harder, and, you know, not necessarily something that's a linear increase in difficulty. People just have to look at the number, and they have to feel as though it is an increase. So Diff 10 might be much harder than Diff 9. We don't know yet, because I haven't played it yet. Who knows? But Diff 9, where it used to be very difficult, got nerfed because Reddit complained and bitched and moaned until basically, you know, Piltz heard him and he's like, I don't like when these guys are angry. I just want everyone to have fun and hold hands, guys. You know, and Joel's like, but we need to kill them, sir. And there's like, no, they must hang out together and hold hands while they're hugging and extracting. And like literally we just sat there for like the last month at Extract. Nothing happens, right? I'm just sitting there rolling around on the ground and like, like you could have like a song playing in the background, just like tulips popping up on the ground or something, you know, and it doesn't even, nothing was going on, right? Yeah, so Pill just wants everyone to have a good time, right? But at the end of the day, Reddit doesn't know what they want. Reddit just wants things that they think they want, which is they want to be good at the game, but to be good at the game, you have to get good at the game, and they don't want to get good at the game because getting good at the game takes time, effort, you know, tears, blood, sweat, all that stuff that you don't like putting in the stuff, and then you legitimately learn that one of the reasons you enjoyed the game in the first place was the challenge, the getting good, being able to survive. Like last night, guys, when we're playing, and the difficulty momentarily was higher for probably about an hour and a half or so. I'd say the beginning of the stream, it was easier than my computer crashed, which I still haven't figured out why. I think it has something to do with my chat program. My computer crashed. Then we came back, and it was very good. It was almost maybe Meridia difficulty, which is pretty difficult and very enjoyable in my opinion. And then towards the end of the stream, like last couple days, it kind of went back to normal, right? But for a little bit there, it was really enjoyable. And it's not just me. You could see people in chat. I don't know if they're plants or not, but you could see people in chat that legit say good game after they have a really tough fight because it makes them feel good, right? At the end of the day, you have people that have an emotional response where they're like, this felt fucking fantastic. You know, like at the end of it, the cathartic feeling after you burn yourself out after doing something so hard, right? Especially if you worked, I don't know, for some people that have worked maybe in, you know, blue-collar work or something where you've worked on a project for an extended period of time and you just end up burned out at the end of it, but it's done and it's fantastic and you're just like, it's fucking fantastic. You know, one of those feelings, the catharsis at the end of it, right? We're just like, this was a fantastic run, one of those things. There's people legit saying that. It's happened all the time when we actually stumble upon much higher difficulty. It doesn't happen all the time because in the last couple months it's gotten easier and easier due to Reddit's influence over the game development, which guys, by the way, as I mentioned before, I don't pay that much attention to numbers, but it's kind of something you have to talk about, especially when, you know, the game will lose players, and I have no doubt in my mind. I have no doubt in my mind that the game won't lose players, right? But after right over here, after the Sony controversy, and then they slowed down development, and then things kind of petered up. This was the major update they had. It's like a month and a half ago now, the major update, which we talked about. I made a video on it, and at the end of the day, the stuff that they changed really didn't even matter that much. I don't want to piss on it, but like what they tried to do, the stuff they addressed was stuff they needed to address, but they just didn't do it enough, which we talked about in the BetterDivers guide. Like the numbers just didn't make up for the fact that it was like stuff's just bad, like the precision strike. Some of the orbitals just really suck. Some of the guns just really suck, right? It didn't really make up for it, right? But there's a spike here momentarily after the massive balance patch, which you could tell people were interested in it, right? They're interested in the changes that really influence gameplay, as you can see right here. But as you can see, with making things easier, it doesn't mean people are going to enjoy it more. It just absolutely petered out. There's nothing at Diff 9 anymore for anyone. Putting aside gathering samples, and if you're gathering samples without contests, it's also not fun, right? I don't know. Like, if I could give away my samples to keep a higher difficulty, I would. I'd pay for a higher difficulty, but I can't. One of those things. So we're just stuck at Diff 9, and unfortunately the difficulty doesn't go up any further. So we've talked immensely about increasing difficulty or rotating it back, and as we've discussed, we might have reached the point people don't like going backwards, so while it'd be nice if there's just a difficulty scale between 1 and 9, right, and then the difficulties are constantly adjusted to make things hard, Reddit doesn't want that. They want some idea that they've gotten better at the game, so you now have to have diff 10 through 15, and it's just the way it is. It sounds cleaner if it's just diff 1 through 9, right? But at the end of the day, you have Reddit wanting to do their own thing, and people don't like going in reverse, so you make the diff 9 harder. Then people end up at, like diff 7. They don't want to turn that number down. They work so hard to make that number higher, right? And in their mind, they're in their psyche, it's something they don't want to do, despite the fact that it's much harder now. There's no real... besides that number, there's no real showing of how hard the difficulty is in the game. I talk about combined kills, so the total number of kills itself at the end of the lobby, just being kind of a rule of thumb along with deaths, so the number of reinforcements you burn along the way. In Helldives now, like in the last month and a half, 2 months, how often do you see Helldives fail on bugs? They just don't, right? They just don't at all. You'll use up the hardest missions so far have been Crooks, which now doesn't seem to matter. Crooks as well as nurseries, and we had 1,800 combined kill games on both Crooks and nurseries, and we had one hatchery one that was also 1,800 kills, but those are relatively rare. Hatchery is more of an outlier than anything, because in the case of the nursery games, the game mode involves spawning a shitload of bugs at the nursery itself as it's being defended, which then allows you to farm them more or less, right? But with hatchery depends on bug holes, the defenses, patrols that are spawning around you, and 1,800 kills has a lot more meaning in a hatchery game than it does in a nursery game, which was also exciting, right? Last night when we played, it seemed like the planet didn't even matter. Getting high difficulty games, we played on all different sorts of bug planets for the bit that was really difficult. It was very enjoyable, but that's not the norm. It's not something that normally happens in the game, and so you can't really depend on it. But either way, like Reddit, just because Reddit knows that they want things to be easy doesn't mean easy is going to be fun, and it isn't really. Dark Souls being an example of where you just have a game that's very difficult, but when you achieve it, you really enjoy it, right? I always compare this game, or not always, but I often compare this game to Dark Souls in terms of how you want to basically beat an extremely difficult enemy, or beat an extremely difficult, have a very difficult run, right? And it makes you feel good at the end of it. So, at the same time, combining like the idea that people don't want to go into reverse, as well as never increasing difficulties. So you have like diff 30 in the game, right? You have diff 30 in the game. And at that point, basically no one can achieve diff 30. No one's going to be able to achieve diff 25. You have the kids on Reddit who only could do diff 15, and they're still going to complain, by the way. But they aren't going to feel so close where they're like, man, I really want to do diff 16, and I'm so close, the game should just be easier, right? And you got people playing diff 21, and they realize that there's actually a chasm between them and the other people that are playing, right? You think we're going to break 1 million bugs? 1 billion? Sure we are. It'll be interesting. That's also something we're going to cover here in a sec, but that's after we get through the announcement here, right? We're not going to be happy unless we get diff 20, minimum. I hope they do diff 30. This is just a random number I picked. You could do diff 6666, right? It really doesn't matter. But the idea being that there's difficulties that are much higher and stuff that generally you won't even be able to achieve, or, you know, it might not be something that's continually achievable, right? Where we talked about burning resources through having temporary upgrades to, like, having a super stratagem that you can get, but only get it from one mission or maybe a couple missions, right? You burn resources to do it and you can't do it again. It's an economy of resources. You could be super samples, it could be based off metals, it could be based off, there's so many different currencies in the game. Requisition, right? It could be based off a lot of different things, and we have things like mech customizers where you could have a basic mech lab for switching out the arms and the armor on it so it's better against certain units, maybe the drivetrain to make it faster, but then it's easier to kill. You know, like kind of like basic like Titanfall mech warrior stuff, but not like so much where it feels like a completely different game, because that allows the kids to do something, they get pride in your work, you're adding something to the game. Excuse me. Pride in the game, just doing something that's a little bit outlandish and not something that is, like, it makes you feel like something you're doing actually has purpose or value, and you can have pride in your work, so to speak, and then when you're using it, it makes you feel good about what you're doing, and it's special. Even if Ben Sam comes along and then talks about how your orbitals suck dick, and you're talking about how good the railgun is, you know, completely unrelated, how good the railgun is and how good the rail cannon is. Like last night we had a guy in chat that was like, really enjoyed the rail cannon, right? It's like, wow, the rail cannon's so fucking good. And then I put into perspective, the rail cannon actually sucks, but it's an aim assist ability. So it's an ability you trade off basically potency and uptime with having to do its thing without you, right? And it looks cool, and you can accent it by making it cooler with kind of like a small, not really AoE, but it fires like 5 small shots and kills like the chargers instead of a Bile Titan, and if it hits a Bile Titan, it glances off. We talked about that last night. There's ways to accent it, and then it should instantly kill like a Bile Titan, but it doesn't, right? Because it's a 5-minute cooldown. It's a long time. I can get fucking 500 kgs in 5 minutes, right? You know, 2 minutes per cooldown, two 500 kgs per 2-minute cooldown. It's basically 500 kgs. That's a lot of damage compared to one rail cannon strike, but for some people that need it, you know, it's an opportunity there. Either way, like, there's opportunities to use stuff, and there's a lot of people that don't put things into perspective or context when they're using it, that just think it's cool, and there's really nothing wrong with it, but when you start getting up to higher difficulties, it's going to start mattering, assuming they add higher difficulties, right? Either way, challenge progression, which is something I hope they do, and maybe this is the start of it, which it may or may not, it depends on how frequently they introduce new difficulties. Start of it, hopefully we get to the point where it's not something where Reddit can argue that they should be able to do diff 30 when they're, you know, only able to do diff 15, right? There's enough of a gap there where you're like, hey, something has to change here, and maybe it's not the game becoming easier to allow me to get better, right? And then they go and look at streamers that are able to do the things that they can no longer do. But in the case, like last week, we had a guy in here that was literally talking about, he said that diff 9 was almost no different than diff 7. You don't want that. That shouldn't be a thing. But there's clearly someone there, and I'd say I'd kind of agree with him nowadays. It probably isn't, because there's some games where I'm playing diff 9, and I'd say it's legit like diff 6. It's not hard at all. It's like you literally just walk around, kill some bugs, throw some cluster bombs on bug holes that open up, and that's it, right? And, you know, you could always play the bots. Don't get me wrong, by the way. People are going to say just play bots. Bots will always be harder. They literally can have an aimbot, and they just walk forward and insta-kill you. If Joel wanted it to, you could just die. That's not fun, by the way. It's one of the reasons that bots aren't fun, is because when you play against them, oftentimes it just results in you getting ragdolled, aim punched, and or insta-killed out of nowhere. Where they're back to the Star Wars thing, by the way. Joel loves tweaking the AI for the bots. Now they're back to the thing where they're just like, like they were doing one of these things like you're fucking in Star Wars. But the thing is, unlike Star Wars, they literally just, out of nowhere, they roll the 2% chance, and they literally just like peg you in the face and you just fall over dead. And there's not much you can do about it. You're just dead. It's just game over, man. And also, not exactly where you want to be with the bots, right? So bots will always be more difficult if they want them to be more difficult. But bugs, when they're challenging, are a lot more fun and can be just as difficult or more difficult than bots, depending on how they're programmed, right? But right now, the last couple months, they're not in a state where I'd consider them more difficult than bots, even though they're more fun. There's a reason people are playing. They probably can't quantify or tell you why they enjoy playing against bugs more than bots, besides it's just more fun, right? But if you look at it and you figure out why, the bots literally just walk in the open. They have no personality. They have no behavior for the most part. They just walk in the open and you just die. All that happens is you just die, right? And you can't, sometimes you can't just fire back either. I like the chip damage meta they had for a little bit for the bots for like a month and a half maybe or so, where the bots would literally just chip away at your health instead of just instantly killing you, and maybe they had an attack that was burst damage, right? So you could actually fight back, you could hide, take cover, you could peek out, and, you know, like they had normal mechanics. And in the last week or so, I think we're back to insta-kill, where just you have Stormtrooper aim and then they insta-kill you out of nowhere. And in my personal opinion, that's not fun. It's not. We talked about that when the game first came out, that's the way bots were. And you'd have the cannon towers too, which we talk about. Joel sitting over there, one hand in his cheese doodles over there in Sweden, just manually controlling the cannon turret, and you just get fucked from across the map. And you had no idea what was coming. You're just dead. And this sneaky little turret's just sitting over there staring at you, and it wasn't even active when you looked at it last, and now it's active and looking at you. And you're just like, what exactly is going on here, guys? I don't exactly know. Either way, this is a culmination, by the way. When I added this was due to the response that was happening on, which we've talked about. We talked about this well before I added. A lot of the entries on my BetterDivers guide is stuff we talked about on the stream, but I couldn't reference it because I didn't have the guide, because I didn't make the guide yet, right? It was just stuff I talked about on my stream, maybe in passing or a couple times in depth, but it never really had a place or an easily referenceable piece of material, which is now the BetterDivers guide. Challenge progression is another way of looking at stat-based progression. So some people in the game really want this game to be Vermintide or Darktide, right? They really want this game to have some stat-based progression where you put in the time and then all of a sudden you just become better, and then you make the gear escalator, which is MMOs, where you just better gear, better bosses, better gear, better bosses, better gear, better bosses. It's an escalator. You just slowly go up the escalator on each step, right? It just slowly takes you up to the top. I think that not only is that boring, I don't think it has anything to do with what Helldivers actually is, which is assuming you're like maybe level 15 or 18, you know, when you get stratagems under your belt, right? That's pretty much all that matters. You have options. Beyond that, level 15, 18, then you can just play diff 9, and what really matters is you knowing how to play the game, knowing your character, and legitimately you can actually dive in with people that have played for months, and you aren't at an extreme disadvantage. I think that's fantastic, because not only does it allow people to leave that might be more casual, they also can come back to a game that doesn't involve a substantial amount of grind. Or in the case you have the gear escalator, what happens with the eventuality of the gear escalator putting aside stat squishes, which eventually happen when the stats get too high, what happens is then you need to add the makeup mechanics, which is people that have been gone for so long. You add easy to accomplish pieces of gear that then people have access to, which is basically like a checkpoint in terms of progression, right? MMOs all have catch-up mechanics now, so if people leave for months, they don't have to grind through every single tier to get back to the top. And it's another form of basically going up the challenge progression, like timeline, to keep people on it. And people really like this gimmick because it gives them reward for doing it. The dopamine and serotonin goes off when they get the new gear that makes them feel slightly better. And worst case scenario is when it's not even gearing anymore, so you don't even have stats. What happens is you have an item number, which is Destiny, where you just have bigger numbers equals better. And at that point, you're not even making your character anymore. And I don't even think it gives you dopamine or serotonin. It's not even like building a character. I don't enjoy it at all. Some people do, but I am not on board with that. Either way, there's other options, though, which instead of challenge progression here, so going to the side here, not challenge progression, stat-based progression, where you get pieces of gear that slightly get better, so you can do higher level content that you couldn't do before, and you get slightly better. The other option here is challenge progression, in which you just have much higher difficulties that you can't achieve and you can't do, and you just try to better yourself, and rewards at the end of the tunnel are things like cosmetics and titles, stuff that's recognizable in games, so when you go and play with randos, they see that shiny piece of armor and they're like, fuck man, this guy has done his work. One of those things, right? People love recognition. It's the same thing with the military. People love recognition in ranks and titles and things that have value, like they give value to stuff that might not even matter, to be perfectly honest. But, you know, and if you can get things like cosmetics that you can put on your ship, gold-plated barrels, stuff like that that's really stupid. But, you know, the idea is that you have stuff that you can show off to people that, you know, venture onto your ship or might see it and go, wow, man, that's pretty fantastic, right? Or, hey, look, this guy has a fucking gold-plated cape. You know, oh, my God, this guy's been here forever. You know, one of those things. People love that shit. They love that. And it's a way of recognizing yourself in the community and feeling as though you've accomplished something. At the same time, people recognize that your accomplishment and go, wow, I wish I had that, or I wish I could do that. It's kind of a segue here, but it's like the same idea where people want to all have the Malevolent Creek cape. Every single one of the major orders should have actually had, like the major orders, not major orders, because they're all major orders. Major orders, so Meridia, TCS, Malevolent Creek wasn't really, it was like kind of like a culmination, just stuff that happened over time. Malevolent Creek, basically stuff that actually was like kind of like a major arc in the timeline, should have had a cape for your participation. And after that, you don't get it anymore. It's just the way it is. And people, there's still people, occasionally you'll see on social media, on Reddit or Twitter, they're like, they should allow you to get the capes again. And you're like, no, don't. You can make a new one. If there's a new arc in the Malevolent Creek, you can make a newer cape or a different cape, but you don't give them the old cape that already exists, right? Because that's a recognition for your service in the time of the game itself. Yeah, like, but either way, people like the little cosmetics that go along with it. So while challenge progression might initially sound stupid because you're like, it's just really hard, right? Yeah, there's games that you actually can play where you actually get enjoyment from playing the game itself rather than from getting tiny little bonuses through stats. And a lot of people are sold nowadays on the MMO grind because a lot of people, like a lot of game companies, do it, and it's an easy way to set off the serotonin and dopamine, receptors. So, not receptors, transmitters, both. Either way, you can definitely add more challenge to the game and give people to work towards, even though it's going to get hot and sweaty and, oh my god, people are going to, like, complain and cry and rage quit. That's all comes with stuff where people care about it, by the way. So if you're talking about the case of lethargy where people don't care, that's probably worse than people complaining, because it means at least they care enough to complain, right? If you reach the point where people don't even care anymore about something, then they really probably don't really even enjoy it anymore. They think they enjoy it until something else comes over that maybe makes their, like the little receptors go off a little bit more, and then they play that, right? And people will always complain, no matter what, but having people actually care about what they're doing to the point at which they try is kind of important, right? And challenge progression would lead to that, right? Either way, Diff 10, very important. I really hope they add more difficulties to the game itself, but very important.
When freedom escalates, its opponents escalate.
We're bringing back a fan favorite from Helldivers 1.
So, another segue, what we're going to talk about, we're going to piece apart this entire video. Another segue that we're going to talk about, as we have mentioned in every single one of our patch note videos that are on YouTube, well, the last couple, is people, like the last one, when it first came back from Overwatch, when I took a hiatus, and that was during the first major balance patch, not the current one, which was like a month and a half ago, but rather the first one, the first major balance patch. When we talked about this, we're kind of past the point where game balance and weapon balance does matter a lot, because that allows people options, which we aren't going to get into right now, but it allows options for people to do different things in different ways and not get the fatigue from using the same thing over and over and over again, which there's still people using the Cinder Breaker, by the way. Actually, I was thinking about this the other night. What would happen if they just turned off the Incinerator Breaker for like a week and a half, and say it was under maintenance or something, right? And force people to basically use other weapons. There's this weird segmentation of people that seem to think that the Incinerator Breaker is so good against bugs that nothing else compares to it. And I think they're legit, like, there's people that on like social media, they're a little like, I really wish I could use something else other than Incinerator Breaker. Like, they don't even know that other guns are actually remotely capable right now, to the point at which they don't even need to use Incinerator Breaker. I don't use it at all. I use the Ruptor till it got nerfed, because it really should have been nerfed, and it wasn't. It really should have been nerfed on day one, like 0-day patch, and it wasn't. Using the Eruptor till it got nerfed because it was super OP. Like, there's people using the Incinerator Breaker thinking it's super amazing against bugs, and it's not really as good. Sure, especially, you have to paint with it, by the way, which means you have to code everything, get the dots rolling. And if you don't do that, the Breaker is better. You have to paint with the Incinerator Breaker. There's some people that think the Incinerator Breaker is so good that nothing compares to it. And bugs compared to bots actually have a lot of options for primaries, but people don't seem to think that's the case. I use the Plasma Grenade Launcher, and almost no one uses it because, stuff gets close to you, you're going to do damage to yourself, which does occasionally happen, even more so with the desync of models, as well as the desync between Ragdoll and dead models is also really annoying, because you'll see like a Ragdoll model like this, shoot it like right here and it'll explode, and it doesn't look like it's hitting anything on your screen because of the desync between the Ragdoll and the actual dead model, unfortunately. Which I hope they fix at some point, but that's also really annoying, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't even know happens. But there's a lot of options. There's a lot of fucking options. Either way, what we said in the last couple of videos, or the last 2 videos, where we covered basically the major patch notes and talked about things other than game balance, which I ended up segueing on. Things other than game balance, things that really, really matter, are stuff that they're already doing right now. You need to have new enemies, which they added the Shrikes and Gunships and Dagu, we talked about, right? But you didn't interact with them on the day-to-day basis. They changed that now, where now you do interact with them in patrols, right? So the Shrikes and Gunships, despite the fact that they don't have a building on the map, might show up in patrols, which is actually really important, by the way, because that allows a new enemy and a new interaction that you otherwise wouldn't have. The Dagu obviously is kind of a special case because he's like a mini boss, right, or a boss, and he shows up in the dropships now, so that's also another interaction you get on the day-to-day. Where initially when they launched, they didn't have that. They didn't actually show up, and you had this one unit that was basically locked and you never saw it. Gunship's obviously much more annoying to deal with than Shrikes are. But either way, you need to have new interactions and new day-to-day occurrences. This oftentimes appears in things like the gunship waves, or excuse me, the dropship waves, as well as the bug holes. It needs to show up in the bug holes too, so it's something you interact with. After Meridia, when this is after we started talking about this, Meridia had a new enemy that showed up, which occasionally you can still see anymore, which is the little brown guys, right? You got the big heads, and then you got the little brown guys. I don't even know the names of them. The little brown guys, those guys actually have a variant of them that has the green spots on it that showed up in Meridia. When you kill them, they explode, right? So they're like the little big heads, little brown guys. But instead of like just kind of being annoying and having a decent chunk of HP, like a medium amount of HP, they explode. And if they're near you, they do a lot of damage to you. Those guys have showed up. But having units that you actually deal with on the day-to-day occurrence in your dropships and with your bug holes is actually really, really important for variety in the game and making it feel like you're doing something different and outside the ordinary instead of just the same old, right? So it's actually really, really important that they're adding new enemies, not just bosses, new enemies to the game itself. And if they have interesting interactions, especially bugs, because bugs are really fucking cool, if they have interesting interactions, that means a lot to your day-to-day occurrence with the bug holes. Bug hole logic, which we've talked about before, is something they definitely need to address as well. The patrols, which it seems like I still understand why you only get 3 bug holes and they're only in one spot and they're only one spot in the map. That means like you can just run away from them and it doesn't matter. It's really, really fucking weird. Dropships, on the other hand, and they're open usually for like a couple minutes, right? Dropships, on the other hand, when they come through, they just drop off an entire armada and then they're gone. And then another dropship can happen. And if you guys remember playing bots like months ago, you fucking have dropships, you run to another base, more dropships, like a guy flares immediately, you run to another base, more dropships, and the units are so tough to deal with in the first place that you can't keep up with the waves, you just have to run away and despawn them, right? And that was also really annoying and kind of toxic, I want to say, Joel. Kind of toxic. But the bugs, the bots, on the other hand, actually, like, they can reinforce really, really fast, where bugs don't. They just climb out of the holes, right? Or spawn in the holes, or spawn basically in the plumes of flame that spawn right there, right? So they climb out of it, and that allows you to basically suppress them the entire time, and none of them build up for the most part. And they can have someone else just going randomly around the map, and he never sees a bug hole at all. And then if he does, you have like primary objectives, which are now a thing, and the primary objectives happening, and the bug holes don't spawn, like transfer to the primary objective, which they very least they should, because primary objective is much more important than a random guy in the middle of nowhere, right? I almost want to say they used to do that, and they stopped doing that. I don't know why. But they used to have that behavior where they transfer to the objective itself, and that went away. Once again, I'm not sure why it happened, but it did. Either way, kind of a segue here. Having a bunch of variety of units that you can fight against, especially new enemies that appear, is very, very important. So, yeah.
The stabby, tentacled beast known as the Impaler.
So this is different, I think, than what he's... Oh, it is the same guy.
The Impaler.
Looks like an aardvark. A little bit like an aardvark. It looks like an aardvark, guys, or maybe an anteater. Maybe an anteater. They're kind of, I think they're closely related. No, maybe a little bit of anteater going on here. Anteater, aardvark. Maybe Not a possum. What are they called? Armadillo. Got the snouts on them too. Yeah. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
When you're playing against the Terminids, you can always try and run away. The Impaler ruins that plan. They will maybe cut off your escape route, and then you will probably have to stay and fight. Or you can fight the tentacles.
The Spore Charger. This one has fog traveling around it.
Wait. Who's this? Who's this? Who can we complain about now?
It's constantly moving, so it's gonna come.
Chris Bredham, level designer. What's their Swedish name, guys?
Right.
What's his Swedish name? Is it Chris? It can't be Chris. Another Lars.
The automatons are bringing in artillery.
A big tank that shoots rockets.
If you're further away, you can see it aimed towards the skies and fire rockets in the air, so you'll have a barrage coming down on you.
This is the equivalent of the, not chemical spewers. What's it called? Caustic bugs? Spore spewer. No, not spore spewer. The green guys that shoot artillery out of their asshole. The bots have a version of it, which actually looks a lot like HIMARS. HIMARS?
In addition, you'll face off against heavier, more deadly brood commanders.
With a small.
So I do want to say, guys, despite the fact that brood commanders, excuse me, the big heads, I don't know why they don't call them big heads, because obviously they're big heads, right? The big heads have a shitload of HP, and if you don't pop their heads, they're actually really annoying to deal with, which we have to deal with continually with the plasma grenade launcher. They can 100% tweak them to be much more lethal than they currently are. There's some big heads that get really, really uppity when they're low on HP. They like to go into a rage mode. You don't really see them often, but when you do, they like to get really fucking annoying. It's more like having a hunter, like an alpha hunter, so not like the passive ones, but the alpha hunters. It's almost like having an alpha hunter, but it has a shitload of HP, and it's much bigger, which makes it harder to deal with. Yeah, they can actually be really fucking annoying, which they could tweak the current AI for the current big heads and make them more lethal. The lethality from the big heads basically just comes from chopping off their head and then having to run away, right? Which occasionally they'll adjust.
The allies that it spawn will not be the ones that you used to.
Oh!
Difficulty 10 has more enemies than we've had before.
Uh-oh. So, not the little brown guys anymore. Which we talked about. This is also another really... Big heads, if they choose... They don't always do this, by the way, but big heads will sometimes spawn the two smaller brown guys. And if they all do that, they actually make a shitload of meat, like right in front of you, like a meat wall that you have to deal with. And while it might not seem like it seems annoying, they take a lot of your time to actually deal with, which then makes it harder to kill off the enemies, right?
Difficulty 10 has more enemies than we've had before on lower difficulties. We've really ramped it up. It's meant to feel like a real progression from 9 to 10.
Wait, what? What did he just say? What did he just say, guys? What did he just say? What did he say here? Just let me rewind.
And from 9 to 10. Progression from 9 to... We've really ramped it up. It's meant to feel like a real progression from 9 to 10.
One could even say challenge progression. But, I mean, that's only one difficulty level, and that's still within reach of Reddit, and they're going to complain, so. One could almost say a challenge progression, but not quite.
We're also introducing a larger type of outpost, and it's going to be a real challenge to take on these massive fortresses.
Hey!
But if you manage to do so, there will be great rewards waiting for you.
Hey, something you can put on your bridge? Oh, the Predator trophies? I love Predator trophies. So, I don't think they ever added Predator to Dead by Daylight. One of the ideas I had for Predator, though, was So in Dead by Daylight, you can actually mori enemies, or basically survivors. And it's a gruesome way to kill off an enemy, and basically, like, kind of something cool you can kind of do. And I suggested if they ever added Predator to the game, which, you know, would be kind of lackluster because Predator's like the superior hunter, right? And in Dead by Daylight, basically you just get slammed by pallets, and it would be horrible. Putting that aside, the juxtaposition between what you know in film and what you'd see on your screen would be completely different. Putting that aside, I thought it would actually be really cool if you could tear out the survivor's spine and make a trophy in the center of the map with their fucking spines, which would be hilarious. In-game, guys. In-game. I shouldn't even need to say that, but I need to say that. In-game. Trophies, accolades? What? Huh. I mean, this is probably, by the way, this is too late in the development cycle for it actually to have been a... we've talked about this for a little bit, though. Is large nests and fabricators needed an update because they've basically been relatively static, despite them being a major part of the map. When you encounter, like, the cauldron, probably being one of the best examples of an already existing point of interest on the map, like a nest on the map, right? The cauldron nest is the really, really big one, and it's basically like a not a trophy run. It's like a marathon when you run through it. At least for me, it's like a marathon when you're running it down, and actually pretty fucking cool. And they haven't really changed those up. There's the new bug nest, which is the one with the 2 holes that are kind of like this, a heavy nest, but it's kind of more like a medium nest in my opinion compared to the cauldron. The cauldron's huge, right? That's what she said. The heavy nest with the 2 holes that are kind of lopsided next to each other, and there's like 8 of them on it, or maybe 6, 7, somewhere around there. I think 7 maybe. 7 holes. That's relatively new too. However, the cauldrons and the large fabricators have been kind of static for a while, and those are actually a big deal on the map. It's something you actually encounter and have to deal with. So, amping them up, even if they aren't the primary objective, is actually really fucking cool. More so is if they actually take time to make them like mini objectives. So you go through, when we're talking about this with the kids' playground, the jungle gym, you go through and you fucking flip the blocks, you turn the dials, right? Something hits you, you run for your life while you're trying to turn a dial. Stuff like that. Kids love that shit. And it makes things new, interactive, and enjoyable. And we talked about this, well, 18, so over a week ago. But we've talked about it periodically on stream. Actually really, really cool. And really hope they do that because it would change up the missions themselves. And lo and behold, we have this now.
Take on these massive fortresses. But if you manage to do so, there will be great rewards waiting for you. Of course, what would the galaxy be without planets?
Dagobah?
Therefore, we wanted to spook it up with a new version of the swamp environment.
Dagobah, he means. He means Dagobah. He didn't say Dagobah, but he meant Dagobah.
The acid storm weather effect now comes with a new mechanic. It reduces the armor of enemies and Helldivers alike. You'll do a lot more damage, but you'll also take more in return, which is just as horrifying as it sounds.
I was actually thinking...
Escalation of
I was actually
Freedom,
thinking that it would actually... I don't know why my play controls aren't working here. I was actually thinking that probably is going to hurt Helldivers more than it hurts the enemies, mainly because there's only 1 of you, as it turns out. I guess 4.
And like the retrieve larva mission, where you find this backpack with little crying larva that you need to reach the extraction with.
Death Stranding.
But you also have to be careful because it's gonna be crying a lot, and you're getting swarmed by more and more Terminids.
Good. So protect the president or protect the VIP, which is kind of... Whoa! Whoa. What happened here? What happened here? I'm surprised he didn't get set on fire by the shotgun and then get killed for setting someone on fire with the shotgun. That being said, what was this? What did we see in the trailer just now, guys? I guess he did run in front of him.
With the Second
but,
Galactic War in full swing, Super Earth is currently battling the automatons and the bugs for control of the Milky Way.
Wait, is this Joel? No, this is Nels. Lead narrative. I think Joel actually left, didn't he? Like, the guy that actually did the GM stuff actually left the company. If I remember right. Even though I call him Joel, which is hilarious. I think someone told me the lead actually left. Oh, they're all Joel. Yeah, maybe there's just random hearsay someone mentioned in my chat. Someone mentioned Joel actually left, but maybe not. Nels. See, Nels sounds Swedish. Nels sounds Swedish. I believe this guy's actually called Nels.
Is currently battling the automatons and the bugs for control of the Milky Way. The Automaton Legion, they are constantly building bigger and worse war machines. The Terminids' migration patterns seem to be changing. There's also been some irregular readings of the Terminid spores in the various sectors where the Terminids are spreading. We'll see where the story develops from here.
So, have we told you everything that's gonna be in the Escalation of Freedom? Of course we haven't.
We have many more surprises in store for you.
A surprise here and there that you maybe didn't expect.
On August 6th, I'm ready to dive, and I hope you are too.
Good. You're supposed to jump away from those because they're going to kill you. Well, fun on the 6th. So, does this include the war bond? They didn't mention a war bond. I think they said the new war bond was the fire war bond, right? I don't remember the name of it. So this might not actually include the war bond, and maybe the war bond's launching later. But there's no mention of the war bond here, even though the war bond was leaked, which I'm pretty sure was intentional, but leaked a week and a half ago, a week ago. I believe the war bond leaked. Well, good. I'm glad they're what?
With you, the community. We've released a lot of content. With you, the community. Helldivers quite significantly together with you, the community. We've released a lot of content.
Where was it? I should turn this into a voice.
Since launch, we've improved Helldivers quite significantly together with you, the community. We've released a lot of content, such as the flyers, the TCS missions, the destruction of an entire planet. This time around, we've got something special prepared for you.
It's our first step out of many, where we're gonna expand the game.
Many steps? I have many steps.
In big, meaningful ways.
New game modes, new objectives, new enemies, and even a whole new difficulty.
To give you that, we have to escalate it. An escalation of freedom.
Oh, he said the thing.
When freedom escalates, its opponents escalate.
We're bringing back a fan favorite from Helldivers 1, the stabby, tentacled beast known as the Impaler.
Aardvark.
When you're playing against the Terminids, you can always try and run away. The Impaler ruins that plan.
Okay. I thought at one point here, I'm pretty sure he said he took community feedback, and I gave a fuckload of community feedback. Only wasn't a Brad risk.
We've improved Helldivers quite significantly together with you, the community. We're
here every day, guys. Although we might not always be playing Helldivers every day. Here every day. Okay. Let's see. Enough milking that.
Our community continues to show us how strong we all are when united against the mindless automatons and the scourge of the Terminid. As we stand here, on the eve of the escalation of freedom, we reflect on the 6 months since launch. We could never have predicted how far this game would go and how many citizens would answer Super Earth's call to arms. We've watched our forces expertly handle every conflict and challenge we've thrown their way, from flying enemies to the Terminid control system, to saving the children of Super Citizen Anne's hospital. Now for this major update, it's time for us to give back something big to the community and welcome in even more players to the Helldivers universe.
So I want to be clear here, guys. I want to be clear. No one cared about saving the kids. I just want to be clear. No one cared about saving the kids. We just didn't want the tank mines. I really hope we never get the tank mines, because fuck tank mines. even though they might actually be useful. Fuck tank mines at this point. I hope that they're just a meme. They're just a meme. No more tank mines. They're literally going to give us an option between having 2 new stratagems, one of which is the tank mines just thrown in, and like helping someone's pet rock, and I hope we save the pet rock, to be perfectly honest at this point. Oh, that's fucking hilarious. Tanks need to be, mines need to be revamped, and I'm sure tank mines are going to fall into that category for multiple different reasons, which are covered on the BetterDivers guide. Mainly results to the fact that the overall effectiveness of a minefield is equivalent to like one Eagle airstrike. They blow up through attrition, and they kill your teammates right on top of it. And you can help deal with that by making it so you spread out the area, either making the density the same and spread out the area, making the field much bigger, or you spread out the density so it's much harder to blow up each individual mine. With stratagems or things, because normally where you throw mines down in an area that's like a choke point, that's also great for stratagems, and they're all just going to get blown up by your teammates, regardless of the fact that the effectiveness of the tank mines themselves are pretty poor. There's a lot of tactical reasons that the mines aren't actually good. The strategic reasons is mainly because it's in a spot where you want them, is also a spot where you're going to throw down all your stratagems. But that being said, that's another issue for another day.
Something that continues to amaze us is our players' insatiable desire for more bugs, more bots, more liberation, and more destruction. We thought 9 levels of helldiving difficulties would be enough, but in the Escalation of Freedom we're turning it up to 10.
Or Escalation of Reddit.
10, that is. County Route 10. Super Helldiv is our most challenging, most relentless
Helldivers?
dive difficulty level yet, and we hope that this is going to give players the intensity they're looking for on the battlefield.
If 30 guys.
And with a great challenge comes greater rewards.
Good. Good. Once again, cosmetics, titles, things that matter. Titles in the game as they currently stand, which is why I'm a cadet. Titles in the game as they currently stand don't mean anything, which is why I don't use one. They don't have an achievement or sense of purpose aligned with them, besides I played the game a lot. And that, in my personal opinion, isn't really an identifying something that I care about, because my level already conveys that, right? So it doesn't really mean anything. If they add cosmetics, that's going to change. Hey, look, guys, a new version of a level 10 base. Oh my God, isn't that ridiculous? We're not a level 10 heavy base. Crazy. Oh, someone's just going to run over there, throw a laser cannon on top of it, and it's just going to go from it's going to go from building to building until it's gone. Laser cannon has a lot of nuances associated with it, so it's not really like broken. If you want a base cleaner, though, it works. Yeah. Our players' insatiable desire for more bugs, bots, and liberation. Well, except for Reddit. Yeah. And Reddit gets everything nerfed.
But a new difficulty level isn't the only thing the community wanted. We've also heard your desire for mission variation, which is why we're bringing you new mission objectives and bigger enemy outposts for both bots and bugs that offer brand new super sample rewards. These outposts will be heavily fortified, and require players to coordinate and strategize in order to take him out. And if you're new to Helldivers 2, you don't have to worry about missing out on all the fun until you unlock Super Helldiv. Because many of our new mission objectives will be playable on other difficulty levels.
Okay. So, Raise the Flag, for instance. I don't know why they got rid of Raise the Flag, but they replaced it basically with Nuke the Nursery, as far as I can tell. I don't know why Raise the Flag is gone now, but it is. Despite it being alright to play against or play with, it wasn't really I didn't really hate it at all, and it was actually a nice change from just everything else you do, but it's currently not in the game for some reason. Babysitting a bug. Yep. Protect the president, as it turns out the president's a bug. Yep, more variation. Obviously, new game modes is important. We talked about one, by the way, for the efficacy of vehicles in the game, and you can make a new game mode based around essentially having a bigger map, more sparse, spread out POIs, and stuff happening in the map itself, and then more the action, the TLDRs, more the action happens around the actual objectives. So the objectives are more in depth, they require more time, and as such they have higher chance of you failing at them. So you go, basically the vehicle just takes you from point A to point B, instead of the current game, which is you run from point A to point E, and you have CD along the way, right? BCD along the way. So, like, one of the reasons that, like, we talked about this before, like, one of the reasons that I understand, like, they haven't said this, but why I think that the vehicles aren't in the game is because they just make things too easy. Because all you do is just go from point A to point B, and that's pretty much it. So it really, it wouldn't really all be all that interesting, and cut a lot of the difficulty, especially if you're speedrunning shit or just going. I guess depending if you're gonna full clear, you still have to stop a lot. So I don't know, but I could understand why it wouldn't be in the game, because you just bypass a lot of the difficulty and/or make the difficulty that exists trivial, for example. So. Could make an entire game mode based around having basically vehicles in the game, right? And just bigger map, more spread out, and more of the action happens at the destination rather than in between the destinations. But good. They started adding new game modes. We talked about that as well in the patch note videos, being important for changing things up. New enemies. They got their Aardvark. It is now the Aardvark. I'm not going to call it anything else.
Escalation of Freedom is unleashing some new threats to our liberty that will take some serious strategizing from the Helldivers to take down. Backed by popular demand, the Impaler,
Never played Helldivers
this
1.
big guy from the original Helldivers, creates some new challenges. No longer can you run from the bugs when the Impaler is around, big, imposing, and destructive. It demands to be dealt with. Also new among
That's
the
what she
Terminid
said.
ranks is the Spore Charger.
That's what you
As
said?
if the regular old Charger wasn't scary enough, the Spore Charger is shrouded in fog to obscure its location until it's right up on you, Helldiver.
I mean, they already do that. Stealth chargers are a thing. Or they just sneak up on you and ground pound you. Interesting.
Lastly, the Terminid Alpha Commander, which is a supercharged brood commander that's bigger, meaner, and doesn't hesitate to call in other bugs for backup.
Be very annoying. If you have a lot of the brown guys around, the little big heads around, they actually can be annoying while you're trying to deal with other units. But once again, you get 3 big heads, and they call in 2 brown heads, little big heads apiece, little brown guys apiece. That turns into then 6 on top of the 3 big heads, which actually is a significant amount of damage you have to deal with everything, right? They don't always do that, though. They did for a little bit, and then they stopped doing that. Just finished up installing my new Lion Leaf fans and doing cable management. Congratulations! My case has like 0 cable management in it. It's always been something I haven't cared about. Some people really like that. They really like having a clean looking computer, especially with RGB and stuff. That just kind of makes it like standoutish. I've never done that. I have a Lion Leaf case as well, by the way. I've had it for 2 decades at this point. I'm still using the same case I bought in the 90s. And the only difference I made is I cut out the 80mm fan at the top and turned it into a 120. Actually, I think it's a 140. And then in the back, I turned the 80 into a 92, which helped substantially with temperatures. But besides that, I haven't changed it at all. It's just... Actually, no, I take that back. I cut out some of the drive cages, too, because it was made for, like, back in the day in 3.5 floppies and such. So, it's still... As it turns out, guys, they tried. They tried so hard. They tried so hard to transition us to... What was it? BTX, I think it was, where they put the power supply in the bottom and then like they flip the boards around. They tried so hard to make that work, and nope. Automatons.
Don't think we forgot about the automatons. Their ranks are growing, too, with the addition of the formidable rocket tank, as well as some other box surprises we'll be throwing your way.
A rocket tank, which is basically the equivalent of an artillery piece if you've seen them in real life. HIMARS are actually have really large rockets. So it's not really a HIMARS, it's the other one. HIMARS, they have a different variant of this that actually has a lot more rockets. The HIMARS uses really big rockets instead. Old one called Rocket Artillery, M2, the MLRS. There we go. Like a play on the MLRS. It's been around for a while. The concept's been around for a while. Usually they're dumb rockets. They aren't the same thing as smart rockets, which, go straight to the target, right? Dumb rockets generally are just artillery rockets, are just explosive rockets that are kind of stupid, and you get them in the vicinity. It's kind of like artillery shells, but not the same, because artillery shells are obviously just kinetic, right? MLRS. Oh, where'd it go? I think it was in the video. Yeah, so more equivalent to MLRS. MLRS is like the HIMARS is basically like this, only they have 6 rockets and they're much bigger, right? It's bad you're not looking forward to the update. You might have played too much Helldivers 2, and you should instead play something else while watching someone play Helldivers 2, like myself. And I feel as though that would help you recover from your fatigue dealing with Helldivers 2. Although I'm kind of curious why you are uninterested in a new update for the game. You're just done with Helldivers, which is possible if you get burned out. Don't burn yourself out. That's why I suggest no one grind at this game, because if you grind at it, you're going to get burned out, which a lot of people do. So, yeah. The Dagobah? It's not a swamp. It's Dagobah.
Explore the swamps,
Dagobah.
but not as you know them. With rolling fog and the untamed flora, the blackened trees obscure the light and the air itself feels haunted.
Good.
Keep your flashlight handy, as visibility is limited and
Flashlight
light
just
is
makes
key.
you blind.
The enemy could be hiding anywhere amongst the undergrowth.
Oh, if only we had Predator Vision, another entry on the BetterDivers guide. So it allows you to swap through different vision modes, just like Predator does. Which includes thermal, EMI, motion-based tracking. By the way, it's not just supposed to be an answer which you stick on it all the time. It allows you more information you otherwise don't have available to you. So you swap through the vision modes. It could be really fucking cool. Not quite the same thing. Pilt said they originally intended on having like heads-up displays for different helmets. It's not the same thing as that. The way it works is basically just changing, giving you like thermal vision. And there's ways you can make the thermal vision kind of like a double-edged sword, so it's something you don't want to sit on all the time because it doesn't give you all the information, but allows you more easily see targets or where they're moving or something, or motion-based vision, which actually just shows you stuff that's moving. There could be a lot of cool intricacies that you could do here that helps you, that allows their art team to make really cool shit without making it to the point where you can't play on it, which we've already seen, where their art team goes ham. Joel team goes ham, and they create something that basically is like kind of Unreal Earth, and as it turns out, we're fleshy meatbags that exist on Earth, and we can't see on planets that don't give us the information to see, you know, so, yeah. Good. Dagobah is pretty cool, by the way, even though it's hard on computers. Oh! Uh-oh.
Under the hood, the last addition I want to highlight about the Escalation of Freedom update is that we're making changes to mitigate the problem of grief kicking in Helldivers 2, while it's our hope that players engage with the game in good faith and sportsmanship. We do recognize that some players are using the team kicking to grief others.
So, I personally have not been a victim for it occasionally happens, but I generally have not been a victim of grief kicking. The most recent ones are basically people that kick because they want to wait to gather all the samples while you're sitting there on the pad just waiting for everyone. Like, you're just waiting there. Like, they want to go around and collect everything after the map's basically done, and that's really fucking annoying. And then if it's the host doing it, they just kick people. This happened to me like twice. I haven't really been extraction kicked in forever. There's some people that kick for... What else do we have? Like, just... there's people that just kick at the pad just to be assholes, and I think that might be a lower difficulties. I haven't really experienced it at all. Or they might know who I am. That's also a possibility. They know who they're dealing with. What?
To help improve this, we have implemented a system where if a player is kicked, they will spawn into a new session as the host with all of the team's loot from their previous session. All items can now be picked up by the player before extraction. The squad doing the kicking will see a message in the chat widget that a player has been kicked, yet their loot remains unchanged.
Okay, so it just duplicates the loot. I guess that's not really... That's a very diplomatic way of solving the problem, by the way. It also could lead to issues where people duplicate loot. I wonder if it could yeah, exactly, just thought the same thing. It might actually lead to loot duping, which would be very unfortunate. Depending on how it works, this could definitely be used for loot duping. And hope that's not the case, because, you know, once again, we've talked about cheating a lot, guys. Not so much when I played Helldivers 2, mainly because it doesn't really matter much in this game. Cheating definitely has a monetary impact on games, even though it affects everything, even though you don't think it does. And loot duping is definitely along the lines of cheating. So, yeah.
With
Good
these
they're addressing
changes,
it, though, for
all
those
players
impacted.
have the opportunity to leave with all loot collected on mission, with no one Helldiver losing out. We're committed to making changes that will improve the player experience and encourage healthy, cooperative gameplay.
Unless they add PvP, which I've suggested, and not like Destiny PvP, like FPS RTS hybrid PvP, or something along the lines of Left 4 Dead 2 PvP. That could be a lot of fun, couldn't it? It'd definitely be a major milestone in the game development. And there's ways they could limit the toxicity involved with it, too, if they wanted to. I think that would actually be pretty phenomenal. It's tough to keep games alive that are basically single player unless it's basically a grinder PvE game, like an MMO game, right? And there's a lot of things they could do. PvP games, on the other hand, they're constantly changing because they have to deal with, people, right? And people try to change what they're doing to best, meta, right? They try to change what they're doing to best do what they're trying to do. They're a large language model, guys, that learns.
Along with this, we're also releasing other quality of life upgrades with Escalation of Freedom, including major fixes to the social menu to make diving with your friends easier.
We talked about that
overall
last week.
We think this escalation is going to be packed full of awesome additions, long-awaited improvements, and a ton of surprises to discover. Helldivers 2, Escalation of Freedom is launching on August 6th.
Well, since they have their lead programmer over here dealing with all the feature changes for the list, I can only imagine it's going to get better from here, guys. But, I'm getting paid in 10-cent SC increments. That being said, yeah, it actually sounds pretty good. A lot of the changes on here are stuff we've discussed on stream and stuff that are on the BetterDivers guide. Some of the stuff, obviously I didn't play the first game. So like their Aardvark, I've never experienced Aardvark. Could be pretty cool. I'm all for them adding new mini-bosses to the game itself they have to deal with. Charger is something you have to deal with. Biotine is something you have to deal with. Dagu is something you have to deal with, right? Hulks to a less... no, Hulks are something you have to deal with. I'm all for that because it changes and spruces things up, even if it's not like a hardcore boss fight, like you'll go into Molten Core and dealing with Ragnaros or something. It doesn't need to be. And they could potentially do boss fights eventually, but as it stands right now, stuff like this definitely changes up what happens. This guy totally explodes and kills you, by the way. I'm gonna throw this out here right now and say this guy totally explodes and can kill you if he's near you when he dies. But he looks like he has a normal snoot from the Charger Chan, so it could be you just boop the snoot and he's dead, which I guess is something you can do, so. Yeah. Good. But anyways, this is looking pretty good, guys. They're back on track in their vacation, so they must have been like hammering on this through June and then July, right? Where they didn't really do anything in July because they're on their Swedish vacation. So hammering on it's on August 6th. There's no mention of the leaked war bond, which means it might be a week later, or they might be. I don't think they're going to do it on launch because it's not mentioned here. It might be a week later, or actually, I'd probably just say it's probably going to be a week later to keep the things rolling. I can't stress enough, like I said before, maybe I have to actually reorganize this in terms of importance. In terms of importance, the updates in terms of importance here, or the suggestions in terms of importance. Because something like Twitch drops, it does help me. I'm not going to admit there isn't a bias there, because it does exist. But it greatly enhances their marketing and gets people to look at something they might have thought is dead or they haven't really considered in a while. Especially if it starts trending on Twitch. It's win-win-win for everyone involved. It's win for the developers, it's win for marketing, it's win for the streamers that are playing it, even if it only really helps the big streamers that are sitting there and everyone sits in their channel or whatever. It helps everyone involved. Twitch drops or whatever insert XYZ platform are actually really important because it actually, like, it's marketing material. And I don't think boots... Well, the suggestion I have for Twitch drops, by the way, is boots. And not boots with stats on them, just boots. You just... different pair of boots, different kinds of boots. It's not really super far-fetched. I'm not talking about like a pair of Nikes or anything. It's just boots. But something that's different is defining, or capes, but at the same time is cool stuff. Cosmetics, once again, start meaning a lot when there isn't just like a straight stat. Also going into we talked about here for burning resources with a crafting system, a light crafting system, which would then allow you to use other pieces of armor that otherwise are not seen in the game. Because, well, assuming you're within light, medium, heavy types of armor, it allows you to strip off stats off the armor. You can make a new kit for new armor, and then you can put the new kit armor on the new piece of armor, and there's an upkeep cost associated with it. I think it's actually a really cool idea. Hilt said originally he wanted to match the armor itself, but I'm personally been using the same 2 pieces of armor since this game launched, because one has extra padding on it and the other has damage resistance on it for explosives. There's no other light armor that has it, and as such I have 2 options. And I mean, if there was a shitload of new pieces of armor in the game, maybe it wouldn't matter, but for the most part they haven't really kind of the cosmetic drip for new stuff in the game kind of slowed down. We've talked about this for the last couple weeks now at this point. It seems like they really don't even have any new items on their shop, so you can't really buy anything, you can't really spend your credits. What are you going to do? And I have, once again, 2 pieces of armor I can pick from. And if you could strip off the armor, I could then put it on other pieces of armor. There's some really cool looking light armor. I can't use it though because it has shit stats on it. It's not something I want, right? So, you know, World of Warcraft, as we talked about before, World of Warcraft is in the same boat. They didn't add transmog, which is the ability to change the appearance of items. They didn't add transmog until the end of Wrath of the Lich King. And it was against, at the great, not admiration, the dev team was very against it when they added it, despite a lot of people asking for it. And the reason for that is because they wanted to show off the new armor. People wanted to have status symbols and, you know, things that people could see, right? So you'd know that that guy actually has the new piece of armor, the new tier that's now available to you, and you could actually see it in the wild. But as it turned out, a lot of people really didn't care that much. They just wanted to have the option of wearing that tier 2 gear they got, right? The tier 2 legendary set of armor, for instance, for the paladin or whatever, right? They wanted to have the throwback armor, and it allowed basically a lot more variety of different things in the game that otherwise weren't there because you can't see it. There's a boatload of different armors in the game, but you can't use them or you don't see them because they have different stats on them that a lot of people might find undesirable or just stuff that's not cool. I don't know why you can't change your stats on your gear, but you can't. And once again, I understand that maybe you want to have things from a cosmetic standpoint that match the armor, right? Like extra grenades have extra pockets for the grenades, and it makes sense. But the other side of the spectrum is you have people that want to change how they look so they're more definable, and so that one guy can wear his blue pre-order armor around and I guess look that way for his entire life. You know, he wants to do that, right? And these are kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum right here. Well, you could add new stuff to the game, right? They can add new armors and things to the game. Once again, I'm still stuck using the same 2 pieces of armor, and there's a lot of cool armor. I'd love to change my armor, but I can't. It's just what I have to work with. So I don't know. Like it is kind of like, I understand the spectrum they're coming from, but I want to say that not putting aside the fact that it would actually be really fucking cool to be able to use different pieces of armor. It's understandable where they're coming from, but I think it would add a lot to the game itself. But they didn't do it. And you could also make it to use up your resources. Once again, having resource burns so people aren't looking at their samples and their metals and their requisition that they can't use. And you could even make an upkeep tab where, for instance, you change out the piece of armor and there's a cost associated with being out of outfitter in casual wear. There's all different ways you could word it to make it have a grind or some sort of burn associated with it. So like it's not only a status symbol and something you can do randomly, but also is something that you spend time on, right? Yeah, I mean, we just talked about the predator vision mode. I don't completely agree with that. Like, it locks it behind a helmet itself. Like, I wouldn't mind having HUD elements, which is originally what Peltz talked about, by the way. He didn't say, from what I remember reading, he wasn't talking about vision modes, which is what I'm suggesting. And obviously, night vision is one of them too, which Reddit talks about on occasion. But thermal, EMI, motion-based vision, right? But the helmets, when they suggested them, was talking about like different elements for, like, let's say a medic or someone that has maybe a scout, right? That gives you more information at further distances on things that is available. Not completely what I'm talking about, but I also get where you're coming from on that. And I hope they add predator vision at some point, because I think it'd be really cool when they're talking about new biomes and new different things. Like this, their VFX Joel can then go ham and make things completely not something you can normally fight in. But if you have predator vision modes, it doesn't. You swap through them, and you can figure out where the enemies are, and you can actually fight back. The problem is when things get too out of line, and then all of a sudden you're fighting enemies that can see you beyond where you can see them. And what Tutu, the planet called Tutu, which was early on in the game, in which it was orange, black and gray, and the contrast was so low, you couldn't see the enemies, and it was like nighttime all the time. You couldn't see the enemies, and then there's fog on top of it. Only the enemies could see you, and all you fucking see when you're fighting the bots was lasers firing at you. It was horrible to fight on. It was absolutely horrible. I refused to fight on that planet. It was terrible. Absolutely terrible. But if they had vision modes, predator vision modes, different kinds of ways of parsing the information and looking through things, you'd be able to do that, right? And it wouldn't be an issue. Working within the confines of what people are capable of seeing does not always work. Like this right here does not always work because it limits how far you can go with weird different things. You could oscillate between basically not being able to see anything because it's so fucking bright, like a nuclear explosion bright, to basically almost pitch black nighttime, and on a planet that rotates through these cycles every like 5 minutes or so. And obviously it'd be nauseatingly horrible for most people. Like you could do some really weird shit, but if you have vision modes that allow you to parse the information and deal with it in a better way, you know, it gives the illusion that you're actually on a planet that is very different than Earth, because it's true, but at the same time allows you to still accomplish what you set out to without having to turn on your esports settings and make everything look like Minecraft. I still have not turned down the volumetric, or turned up the volumetric fog, by the way, because that was where the flashbang lights were from, if you guys are curious about that. Still have not turned that back up. But, yeah. Yeah, they, like, you're kind of, so, like I said before, Pilz, when he talked about the helmet modes, he was talking about adding HUD elements to it, and that's not really what I'm suggesting. But similar. You're basically talking about what I'm suggesting here. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I said right here, is 100% they could add it through ship modules, so at the end of the day, it's something you can grind out and you have access. Basically, this turns into a basic feature of the game. It's not something that's linked to a piece of armor or helmet. It's just something that's available once you grind it out, something that's available that adds quality of life change to how you play the game. And it represents not only a resource grind, but something else you could actually add to your ship that then makes you feel like you're doing something different. One of the problems with the most recent patch where they added stuff was it's just a lot of it was power creep. A lot of it's power creep. 5% this, 10% that. Some things were cool in it, but most of it was just power creep, and power creep is not sustainable. You get 5% to your cooldowns, as we talked about before. You get 5% reduction to your stratagem cooldowns. You know, that doesn't seem like a lot, right? They do that once every 2 months. In a year from now, you have 30% cooldown to your stratagems. That's substantial, and that means that not only do they have to add bloat to new stratagems to make sure that they're behind a wall and not getting used all the time, they have to have bloat to new stratagems. They then have to deal with the fact that new players coming to the game are going to feel very lackluster till we're once again back to the gear escalator, right? They have to come back, and now they're going to have to grind shit out, and then they're going to add catch-up mechanics to the game. And then they have to add catch-up mechanics to the game to keep people, you know, like on top of it, when in fact, oftentimes, as the player base has talked about, they aren't me. They aren't playing this game like... I don't think most people can play this game like an MMO like I've been doing. That's fucking weird. But they come in and play on the weekend, right? As you can see with the Steam DB numbers, it's like a 20% increase on the weekends for the most part, right? And the Friday, Sunday rolls around, and then it drops off again. Although we're dropping further and further. Just saying, you know, Pilz, if you hired me months ago, I could have hammered out all the stratagems already. We could have hammered through the stratagems. We could have been on the primary gun balance. Would have had things, you know, like, absolutely would have been done. Sipping martinis, you know, playing pocket pool with your mom, because she's a great lady, by the way. She makes great chocolate chip cookies, but, you know, we would have been done with this shit. But instead, here we are, you know. If only things were done sooner. But, like, the weird thing is, we talked about this before, guys. A lot of the things dealing with balance, you know, like this takes... Predator Vision mode would take a decent chunk of programming, right? This isn't something you can just implement. But a lot of the stuff that I suggest for, like, balancing is legit stuff that wouldn't take long at all. Like, someone could do this in an afternoon, if that. If you're talking about, like, literally just values, variables, like, for, like, cooldowns and items, they just change that in a line of code. That's it, and it's done. And then maybe you do like a quick test on it. You do like a test run to make sure everything's working properly. Test it out against some difficult enemies to make sure it's not too OP. You know, you do like a test build and you go through the rules, right? And you could even make it. I really liked. I don't know if this was cheaters doing this, but early on in the game, they pushed basically beta builds live, and I don't mean beta builds live as in buggy builds, although that was true too. But I rather mean that you had access, people were given access to stuff before it released, and they basically gathered information off of people when they're playing with it. It's entirely possible to implement the whole mechanic of prototyping and beta testing into the game itself and give people the option of a special mission that they can then go on that allows them access to a beta build of the game itself. Or not a beta build, but rather adjusted variables in the game itself. And then you can gather feedback from their brief playthrough of the game itself and tell them like they're playing with experimental weapons or stuff like that, right? They're playing with the experimental variant of the precision strike that has slightly tweaked model. You know, if you want to throw your narrator, if you want to throw RP narrator in there too, you want to throw actual Joel in there where he actually writes narrative for a prototype of weapon, you can do that too, right? But I like actually where they're testing it kind of with players and getting feedback from the players in the game itself, and you don't even need to be there like asking them short questions. You could just have a easy 5-question survey that they fill out at the end, right? And with radio buttons. And I think it would actually work out pretty well. But people know that stuff is changing and things are being differentiated along the way. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that, and I've talked about this for a long time prior to playing Helldivers 2, by the way. Overwatch did that briefly, where they had an experimental modes built into the game. They stopped doing that because I don't think they really even care about player feedback. But it also allows you to not only, you could even throw the player feedback in the trash can if you want, that doesn't really matter. But rather you get an idea of how people perform with the stuff that you might be testing in-house, and you're not getting the same feedback from people in-house, right? Arguably, I've played on a lot of really weird variants of bugs and bots that range from easy mode to, hey look, and was it 2 days ago? Hey look, I'm playing against bots, and literally step out from cover and get sniped in the face and fall over. And not hyperbole, literally just walked out from cover and a Hulk insta-killed me with his blaster from long range. And, you know, that's arguably that's already kind of prototyping, right? But we've had that happen, and I'm not completely against it. And it also makes people feel special, that they're doing something unique and cool that no one else gets to do. And maybe they'll make a Reddit post about it, talking about how awesome it was, and talk about how great the Commando is, and clap their hands, and ask Arrowhead really not to nerf the Commando because it's such a great weapon. Commando needs to be buffed, by the way. Commando should never get nerfed. It's so good, guys. Please don't nerf it. The Commando sucks. It's sometimes it can perform a little bit better than EAT in terms of shots per minute, which we've talked about, but oftentimes doesn't have the damage to keep up with the EAT, and you'll lead to a scenario. For instance, most basic level, a charger takes 1 EAT to the face, a normal charger, to die. Commando, it takes 2. And that halves the shots per minute efficiency. That's pretty bad. But, you know, it can still blow up fabricators, so I guess there's that. But, yeah, like, it gives people, like, opportunity to feel different and unique, and that what they're doing matters. And even if you take the BetterDivers guide, roll it up, and throw it in the trash can or shred it across the world, it makes people feel like that what they're doing actually matters, or something's changing in the game that they're affecting, even if it's kind of the illusion of change, right? But at the very least, you get feedback and player stats, so you can figure out how well they're doing with it and what's actually happening with it. Like I said before, I think it would actually be kind of curious if they just put the Incinerator Breaker into maintenance for like a week and a half, or maybe 2 weeks, where people have to play with a different gun, because as it turns out, the bugs really aren't. You don't need an Incinerator Breaker, but there's a lot of people that they are their own worst enemy. We talked about MMR here, guys, with the possibility of MMR, which I think would be a double-edged sword. I don't know if it'd fix things, but it'd definitely make things different, right? So people can't play higher difficulties than they can perform in. But we talked about basically trying to stop people from being their own worst enemy by trying to do things that they are clearly incapable of doing, right? Yeah. And in the case of the Incinerator Breaker, there's so many people, because I think there's some streamers somewhere that put it on a tier list, or maybe a big streamer was through here and he talked about how great the Incinerator Breaker was. There's so many people using it still, even though there are a lot of options you can use outside of it, that it really kind of shows you that, like, it's like a headless beast at this point, where you have like the remnants of when the game had 400,000 players that now just can't make decisions for their own. And I'm down here with 20 viewers, 20 viewer Andy down here still streaming the directory, but people don't watch me. People are like allergic to small streamers, as it turns out. If you don't like have 100 viewers, people don't like you. So, just gonna throw that out there. But like, it's kind of weird how there's like so many people still using Incinerator Breaker. Is Incinerator Breaker good? Sure it is. You have to paint with it, by the way, as we keep talking about. You have to get the dot rolling on multiple enemies, and if you don't do that, it's worse than a breaker. But there's so many people using it, and they use it like the breaker, that they're just And then they go to the Reddit and they talk about how they're still using the same weapon and how it sucks so much and they want difference. And like, there's like a bunch of things you can use against bugs right now, and they just choose not to do it. So, I don't know. And what happens if you just turn off the incinerator breaker for 2 weeks just to see what, and put it? It's being touched up by maintenance. You know, maybe give it a little lightning bolt on it or something. I don't fucking know. just to force people to use different items in the game, because you can use a lot of different things against bugs. They just don't. Yeah, I mean, you guys see how well I do, and I'm using plasma grenade launcher. Those little fucks get up next to me, and like I clearly can hit myself putting aside desync between the model and the dead body. Actually, by the way, it's actually kind of incredible that you're using the Dominator against bugs if you're doing that. I did for a bit prior to it getting buffed, by the way, when the Slugger was big, and I'd use the machine pistols for all the smalls, and I'd tap with the machine pistol, which basically helps with ammo efficiency. I don't think I'd ever want to do that again, but you could do that, mainly because the Dominator is very good in this niche in the center, which is the medium-sized units. So the little big heads, the brown guys, and then the big heads, caustic bugs, as well as ticks, the spitters, it's good with all the medium-sized units, and that's actually pretty good. But other than that, then you have to use the machine pistol and all the small units too. Good? Takeaway here, guys. Takeaway is, I wonder where they got influence from, guys. I wonder where they got influence from. No idea. He was like one step away from saying challenge progression, by the way. He said progression? Improve progression, or difficult progression. That aside, also, what was this? So this, going back to what Odie said last night, by the way, I didn't notice this because I don't read the major orders anymore because I just don't fucking care. But apparently, listed in the major order was that the bugs can become more aggressive. As we saw last night, they are actually becoming more aggressive. It was only for a short stint when I was streaming, about 2 hours or so, in which the bugs became more aggressive. And at the beginning of my stream, they weren't, and then I crashed, and then they were relatively good to fight against, and then at the end there, they kind of tapered off towards the end of the stream. But apparently, they're trying to ready the community for more difficult bugs, which, once again, I think we're to the point now where things have to go up. Even though I'm all for diff 1 to 9 being the limitations here, we're to the point where people don't want to go in reverse, so you can't really make diff 9 more difficult. You just have to make diff 30. As it turns out, even how silly that sounds, because people want to go up. They want to pretend that they're always getting better no matter what. So you have to make a diff 30 now instead of reducing the difficulty of diff 9. Even though I was very much on board with just making diff 9 the hardest difficulty, now I was improving it, now I was making it more difficult. Now we're kind of the point where we discuss this, kind of the point where you have to diff 10, diff 20. So the kids on Reddit don't go, oh my god, I can't play diff 9 anymore. Oh, this game should be a lot easier than it currently is. I don't know why. I don't know why diff 9's so hard. It doesn't make sense. Why do the chargers take so much damage to die? Why is this a thing, right? And you're just like, the same shit, by the way. It's two sides, the same coin. It's doing the same thing. It's just doing it a different way. One of which gives the behavioral, dopamine and serotonin, which is you're getting better because your number is going up, right? Even though it's, from a programming standpoint, I'd say it's actually just better. It's just diff 9 always, but, some people won't like that. I'd say it's probably better. Like, we talked a bit about the EFT aspect of the game, right? The same sort of people that probably are playing EFT are playing this game. They mentioned we haven't really gone to the entry on guns yet. A primary, that's definitely going to be an entry in the BetterDivers guide, because that's going to be a longer one, talking about primaries as well as armor pieces. We haven't really gotten to that point yet, mainly because I've been putting it off. Another one, like we talked about Logi's. Logi's very, very fucking cool. I put that off for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. You could potentially do that, and it'd actually make things, I'd say, pretty cool. The same sort of people that are probably playing EFT are the same sort of people that are probably interested in this game. It's not PvP in the same way, but it's sort of the gun military aficionados, so people that like kind of like military porn, more or less, in the purest aspect. Like military tech is cool, right? we just talked about the MLS, right? The MLRS here, and comparing it to this is from the 70s, by the way. Comparing it to the new artillery piece from the Bugs, right? People actually really like that. They think it's really cool. So when they talked about changing fire modes, changing attachments, I mentioned before that, well, this is kind of getting ahead of myself again because it's going to be on the BetterDivers guide, talking about scopes and how they're kind of super stingy with magnification in the game despite the fact you're using rifles. Not really. You can go buy, you can get scopes today with magnification you can change. That's not really super uncommon, right? Despite the fact that it really helps. There's a lot of people that, like, so I mentioned a weak mech customizer. You can make the same thing for attachments. You don't need to make it super in-depth. You don't need to go to EFT lengths where you have the gun, the stock, the barrel, the slider, you know, like the forebarrel and the underbarrel and the mounts on the mounts on the mounts, and then like you can put like 3 scopes on your gun or 5 scopes on your gun or some stupid shit like that. But I think it would actually probably be fitting in the game where you can modify it, and it gives a lot of autonomy and makes people feel as though what they're doing matters and what they're changing actually matters in the game. So probably in the future that could be somewhere to go. That being said, the guns themselves, the primaries, need to be addressed prior to that happening because the primaries right now are in a really shit spot, mainly because they're just, it's kind of all the same. If you guys didn't know, we've talked about the stat stick. We've definitely talked about this more. Or we talked about this before on stream, but I wanted to make a BetterDivers guide before I delve into it again. But yeah, I think it could be, and I think it would probably help the game. But primaries need to be looked at and retooled prior to that happening, which is something we're going to get into. We're not going to do that tonight, by the way, because this was an extended podcast, mainly addressing the upcoming changes, by the way, which are really cool. As we mentioned, guys, as we mentioned before, there's no mention in here of the Warbond, which was leaked. Quote-unquote leak. They did the Apple leak. Uh-oh, it just happened to show up in the store. Wow, that's weird. You know, one of those things, which, you know, marketing is marketing. They have to do that, and they should do that, by the way. No mention of the Warbond here, but my guess is, well, actually, let's just... There's no mention here of the Warbond. There's someone asking specifically about that. No mention of the Warbond here, guys. So my guess is we're going to see it maybe a week after this, is probably how they want to split it up. And once again, I really, really think that Twitch drops would help with what they're doing. And they can do a pilot run too, which they kind of did when the game first came out, but everything was a shit show anyway, so I don't think you could actually pull any data from that. But I do think having Twitch drops would help the game a lot. I think Helldivers 2, everyone wins in that case. Kids tune in that don't watch Twitch streams and sit there and idle and make fun of streamers or whatever, and they get their cloaks, they get their capes, they get their, you know, you can even add belts to the game. There's a lot you could do with cosmetics. Belts are one of these things where you can wear them and they don't really disrupt the current piece of armor. Although I think some armor pieces have belts already, so maybe that's kind of, you know, adjustments would have to be made. But there's all sorts of weird shit you can do in the game. Feel if they make Helldivers 3, a lot of things you're mentioning could be built in the game from the beginning. Oh, we need to add an entry for engine porting. I'm going to forget about that if I don't add something here. Sure. I don't think... So they mentioned this game's a live service, so I don't think it's really... They don't intend on just giving up on it. Yeah, a live service game is generally something that is long-term. It's something that you just keep improving on and you keep making better. So, well, something I've suggested, a lot of what I'm suggesting here might be something that's different enough where you'd find a different game. In a live service, your game turns into other games throughout its history. Overwatch changed. Overwatch 2 wasn't really a new version of Overwatch. Overwatch has changed immensely over the years. League of Legends is kind of the same. League of Legends is another example of a long-term service. Fortnite has changed immensely over the years that it's been out, even though it's the same game, right? Rainbow Six Siege has also changed immensely over the years. There's a lot, like I put milestones in here, usually in front of features that require a significant amount of time, and they would drastically change how the game is presented and how people deal with the game itself, or things that might otherwise be found in Helldivers 3. If they're planning on doing a live game and they don't want to give up on this, Helldivers 3 is, like, never going to happen, or it might be 6 years out from now. That's, you know... These games as a service are long-term projects. They aren't things that just you're over with. If they want to do like a game and then they just do deals, you know, like a couple war bonds or something, then they're done with it after 2 years. That's not really a game as a service, in my opinion. That's kind of just doing what everyone else does already. So, my take on it was they were planning on doing a game as a service, and that was originally what they announced and what it seems like they're doing. So we're gonna probably go along with the idea that this is going to change a lot over the coming years, and you have to look at it from a long-term outlook, right? Things that are actually going to be big changes, but wouldn't be something like changing an engine, for instance, isn't something that I would ever suggest if this was going to be like a 1 year or 2 year game, right? But if this is going to be something where they're planning on supporting this game for the next 6 years, do they want to be on the same engine, having the same problems a year from now, 4 years from now? Not really, right? And this is going to be an in-depth topic which we talked about already a couple days ago. And it's not something that's easy, and I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's something you have to consider when you're doing something that's long-term, right? Like a lot of these ideas, some of this stuff in here is actually, well, some of these are small things like balancing. Some of these turn into major features or milestones or drastically alter kind of how the game's played in a way that actually makes it kind of really cool, right? But sure, yeah. And you could say, by the way, oh, all this stuff is common sense. Everyone thought of it forever. You know, it's all, everyone's thought of everything on here, by the way. It's always found on Reddit. Everything on here is on Reddit, no matter what. It's all on Reddit. You're not special at all. I guarantee you there's a lot of shit here that's not found on Reddit, or they watched my stream over the last 5 months and have found it. And if you're talking about the really weird, quirky, in-depth shit, like PvP or something like that, not PvP itself, because the idea of PvP is very generic, but the implementation of PvP, for instance, with an RTS FPS hybrid, or a time kind of, what would be called, like a time trial. Not really time trial, but like trying to stop Helldivers from succeeding while not being, you know, like super competitive in the fact that you can't do that much against them. Yeah, like Left 4 Dead 2. I think they'd switch engines and they'd come up with a new game title. I mean, they could just call it Helldivers. I mean, that's eventually what it circles back to, right? Is just Helldivers. But I mean, what they're doing right now is like every time they release something, Escalation of Freedom is basically a rebrand of it. This is kind of like announcing a war bond, but not really. But it is kind of at the same time, because the war bonds all have names, right? For kind of like arcs. But not really, because it's also not really changing it. I don't actually know how their title syntax is working here, but you know, it's an arc, right? I guess a good way of thinking of it is an arc. They have to differentiate the game somehow that they're changing things, right? So this right now, like the subtext here, the subtitle. I don't even know what you call this, like the sub. Announcement as a way of differentiating yourself. A lot of game companies do that with new DLCs they're releasing. Build new versions of the same game and make a crap ton of money. Not many games have access to a money printer where they legit can just barely change anything and like rack in money. Also, they mentioned before they don't really want to do that, but you know, sure. Okay. As we mentioned before, so bug difficulty has increased. We saw the grubs. Saw the grubs a couple days ago, and I made a clip on it right there. You can see them right there, so they're already in the game. A while ago. Stuff. Covered all the do's. Apparently the difficulty might get higher for Diff 9, which I've been looking forward to, so things are going to be more difficult again like they used to be, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but here we are. TLDR, guys, for the video, and the announcement here is a lot of stuff we've talked about on stream, and they're addressing in the game itself. New game modes, new tiles that already exist, mainly heavy tiles, which we talked about in BetterDivers Guide. higher difficulties, which are very important, new enemies, which are also very important to spruce things up, because fighting the same bugs and bots coming out of the same bug holes and dropships gets old. It gets fatiguing. A very important part of the game, and I think in general they've done a pretty good job with the enemies, although now 6 months in is something that is kind of long in the tooth, right? So, very important that they dress that up and spruce it up. Hopefully a lot of interesting behaviors and patterns. The personality makes bugs interesting. Now, bots aren't really all that interesting, but maybe, you know, that's something they're going to have to take a look at some point there, is just how boring bots are. And figuring out ways of doing that without just insta-killing people out of nowhere. But otherwise, pretty much everything in here is good. Almost everything they talked about is good. It probably should have been done a while ago, but here we are. New large outposts, new large fabricators or large nests, very important. We talked about before, all these things are very cool. Biomes are constantly changing, which is good. The Dagobah biome, which was added over a month ago, I think Meridia was added basically around the time of Meridia, maybe 2 months ago. Very cool and very different from everything else that's already in the game, and also very good. I don't know, I have never really heard a lot, like, I know there's people getting griefed on occasion, and it's occasionally happened to me. I don't think it's regular, but it could happen at lower difficulties, and I just don't know, so I don't play at lower difficulties. But yeah, otherwise, pretty good stuff, guys. Interested, we'll definitely be covering the patch when it comes out. As I mentioned before, as long as it doesn't come out during the World of Warcraft launch, in which case I'm going to be occupied for the next 2 weeks to a month. August 26th. Well, there's my start time, so. That's a month from now. And I will be playing like that as I have for every single World of Warcraft expansion pack, guys, when it's launched. So, as a lot of streamers do, and then they play it for a couple days and they quit. So, I expect almost no one to watch and no one really to be interested, but that's okay. Either way, this looks good, guys. Really hope we see more of this, and there's a lot of things on here for to be worked on. A lot of things on here to be worked on. Okay. Alright, guys. I'm going to wash my coffee cup out and grab a soda, and we're also going to play some Gamaz here in a little bit after we make a highlight video out of this. Be right back, guys.